back, Reynaldo Lopez, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, August 21st. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have lots of waiver wire pitchers. How many of them actually matter for fantasy? I'm not so sure. Welcome back to Reynaldo Lopez, who had a big return start up against the Phillies. We've got some hitter questions and much more, but let's jump in.
Is this happening? It is!
All right, Chris, over to you, the player of the night.
The player of the night, obviously, is Spencer Torkelson, who had 3 singles and a double. I think he drove in 1 run and scored another. And that's not like a huge performance necessarily, but I do have a fun fact that I think tells you where Torkelson is right now. I believe he has multiple hits in 2 of his first 3 games since coming back from AAA. And yeah, he had 4 batted balls today. All 4 of them had an expected batting average over 900. Now, that's one of those stats that we don't necessarily cite on a per game or per at-bat basis. So I do want to say that, yes, that is as impressive as it sounds. The last player to have 4 batted balls in the same game with an XBA of over 900 is Nelson Cruz, which one, that tells you how long it's been because he's been retired for a little bit now. That was in 2019. It has been 5 full seasons since a player had 4 batted balls in the same game with an XBA over 900. That is pretty impressive. And obviously we saw with Spencer Torkelson, he was a disaster early on this season, got sent down to the minors, and nobody really thought it was weird that he got sent down. It was well-deserved. He had a 596 OPS when he got sent down on June 1st. And then he went to the minors and was just okay. Didn't really dominate at AAA the way you'd hope, but this is a guy who last season had 19 home runs after the All-Star break, was frankly, arguably a league winner after he got recalled or after he got hot last season. And so we know he has that kind of upside. He's 6 for 10 with 2 doubles and a triple since returning from AAA. And I think if you're looking for corner infield help, you should probably take a look at Spencer Torkelson because, as we saw last year, when he gets hot, he can get really, really hot and help carry you.
Mm-hmm. And overall, his time at AAA was not great, but he did start to heat up right before he got called back up. Last 21 games at AAA, a 256 batting average, 6 homers, 18 runs, 21 RBI, and a 934 OPS for Spencer Torkelson, who was only 36% rostered. I think you said it right, Chris. In leagues that have a corner infield spot, so 12-team roto or deeper, my guess 15-team roto, he's already rostered. But in some of those 12-team roto leagues, it's kind of slim pickings for corner infield, and someone who's less than 40% rostered might actually be out there. So I think that makes some sense. But obviously, I don't think we're taking him over, other first basemen that have been hitting for quite some time. Someone like Michael Toglia, right? Would you take Torkelson over him?
Toglia has really slowed down himself, hasn't he?
I thought he did, but then I looked at his game logs today, and it still looks really good to me.
Yeah, okay. He has a 906 OPS in the month of August. That is pretty surprising because it's only 3 multi-hit games. Yeah, I would take Toglia over Torkelson, but I do think Torkelson, if he gets right, probably has a higher ceiling than Toglia.
Mm-hmm. What about, Carlos Santana's, 42% rostered.
He's totally fine, but if you want to chase upside with Torkelson, I'm fine with that as well.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. So let's remember, Torkelson, a former first overall pick. It obviously has not happened consistently so far in the majors, but we've seen these spurts of him hitting for massive power, and perhaps he could do that again here over the final 6 weeks of the season. Let's slide over to Reynaldo Lopez, who had a big start in his return from the IL. 5 innings, 1 run, 10 strikeouts up against the Phillies. 18 whiffs on 90 pitches, 8 of those on the slider, 5 on the curve, 3 on the fastball, 2 on the changeup. Had everything working in this start. And I think anytime a pitcher is returning from an elbow, a shoulder, a forearm type injury, anything like that, the velocity. How does that look? And it was fine for Reynaldo Lopez here. In fact, the fastball was up 1 mile per hour. The curve was up 1.3. The slider was up 0.5 mile per hour. Both of his breaking pitches look great. I know that we've expressed skepticism for a large majority of the second half here, Chris, where, the numbers are going to regress at some point, but in a time right now where it's kind of hard to find reliable pitching, maybe Reynaldo Lopez can do that, at least in his first start back. What do you think?
Yeah, I think at least in any head-to-head points league, he's a must-roster player. And I say that being the biggest skeptic of Reynaldo Lopez on this podcast, maybe the biggest skeptic in the fantasy industry. In head-to-head points league, there's no question he's must-roster. He's a relief pitcher in those formats. I still think I would place the ERA the rest of the season over 4. He has a 4.40 xERA for the season, one of the biggest gaps in baseball. But what we saw today is what the upside can look like. Now, it was, we haven't seen this many strikeouts from him, but the strikeouts were trending up before the injury. The fact that he came back and his velocity was actually a little bit up is a good sign. So, yeah, if you want to take the optimistic view of Reynaldo Lopez, I think that's reasonable. I don't know how much I share it.
Mm-hmm. I totally get that. It's just, again, it feels like once we get outside the top 20, 25 starting pitchers, it's just, I can find something wrong with many of the starting pitchers that we're ranking.
Absolutely.
From 25 through 70, basically. So, Reynaldo Lopez has had a huge breakout season. I don't think anyone's expecting him to pitch to like a sub-3 ERA rest of season. But yeah, if he could just be serviceable, we will take that the way that pitching has been trending over the past couple months here. Quick reminder to sign up for the FBT newsletter if you haven't already. You heard us talk about it all season long. Things are winding down. You might not have as much time to consume all of our fantasy baseball products here, the podcasts and all the articles, but you can do that with the newsletter that gets delivered right to your inbox. So scan the QR code that will take you right to the website where you punch in your email address and you will get a free newsletter delivered every single weekday right to your email. Let's take our first break, and when we return, we will get into the news and notes. We'll do that right after this.
College football is back. SMU at Nevada on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back in. What's the latest on the Kyle Tucker saga? Well, let's fill you in. He took batting practice and was involved in outfield drills on Monday, but manager Joe Espada said Tucker won't be close to a rehab assignment until he runs the bases. And apparently Tucker remains limited to jogging for the time being while he recovers from a bone bruise in his right shin. One of the more confounding, mysterious injuries that we've dealt with the past couple of years. I think we could all agree there was probably something more there than a bone bruise, or maybe it was just a really, really bad bone bruise. But yeah, I have a few head-to-head playoffs that have started up, and I was depending on Kyle Tucker being back by now. He is not.
Yeah, no, it's what else can we say at this point? It does seem like we're at a point where there is legitimate progress being made. And that's the basic that you can hope for in this situation. But I don't there's 10 days left in August, 9 days left in August. I don't know how many days there are in August. 30, right?
31.
31 days in August.
I think so, right?
I have no idea. Genuinely, I know there was like a little mnemonic device that some people remembered, and I never bothered with that. 9 or 10, he's not going to be back in August.
There are 31 days.
He's going to have to go on a rehab assignment. It still seems like he's got some hurdles to clear before that. I'm guessing he's going to have to go on a rehab assignment, but I think that's what they've said as well. And I mean, the head-to-head season might be done before Kyle Tucker's back, unfortunately. I'm not dropping him anywhere I have him because we know he's a first-round caliber player when he's healthy, but it's just been maybe the most frustrating situation in baseball this season.
And I always find it so interesting when a team loses one of their best players and they just rally around everybody else.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what the Astros have done. The time that he went out of the lineup early June, they were way out in the AL West. Now have a 4.5 game lead over the Seattle Mariners, which is just crazy.
And that's gonna grow, because as we're speaking, the Mariners just blew a 3-0 lead and are down 6-3 heading into the 9th against the Dodgers. So yeah, that's I don't think they're like, they were 27-33 with Kyle Tucker, and he was playing at an absolute MVP level. So I don't really think there's anything to it. I think they just were playing way under their heads for the first 2 months of the season, and then everything came back together, and they'd be even better if Kyle Tucker was healthy.
Yeah. My preseason World Series prediction, Phillies over the Astros. There might be something there. Let's see if the Phillies can heat back up here. Lots of Yankees news. Where do we start? First up, Luis Gil left his start early with lower back tightness. He was pretty bad before he left. 3 earned runs over 3 innings. He walked 6, and he threw just 47% of his pitches for strikes, which is about the lowest number I have seen in a start all season long. We know Luis Gil has had his struggles with control, some inconsistencies throughout the course of the season, but this was especially bad, and maybe it's because he was pitching through a back injury. So we will wait to learn more. I think Clark Schmidt is working his way back, so it might afford the Yankees the opportunity to maybe shut Luis Gil down a little bit here as his innings have started to add up a little bit.
And as we've said in the past, if Clark Schmidt had never gotten hurt, I think it already would have happened for Gil. You know, he had that rough patch, I think, around June. And I think we would have seen them dial him back if they had another pitcher available, because he's thrown about 130 more innings than he did last season. So, yeah, they needed to manage his innings one way or the other. And maybe this is kind of a little bit of an excuse to do that if it ends up not being that serious.
And it's hard to speak in hypotheticals, but man, they absolutely could use an arm like Luis Gil in their bullpen. So
yeah,
I don't know. Eventually, maybe September comes and they make some kind of transition there, but we will wait to learn more on Luis Gil. Next up, Aaron Boone indicated Tuesday that he still plans for Clay Holmes to be his primary closer. Boone added that he could be more open to using Holmes earlier in the game if he feels the matchup is right. Clay Holmes currently leads baseball with 10 blown saves. He did pitch on Tuesday. He got the 9th inning with the game tied. He walked 1, but struck out 3. Some names to watch here: Tommy Canley, Luke Weaver. I have kind of speculated on Jake Cousins, who has a wicked slider, and he threw 2 scoreless innings in extra innings here on Tuesday. So we'll see. My guess is Clay Holmes still gets the next save opportunity, but at least it's on Aaron Boone's mind. We know that. And one more with the Yankees. Boone said it would be a little ambitious to think Jazz Chisholm could return when first eligible on August 24th. Jazz has already resumed fielding grounders and hopes to begin swinging a bat soon.
One thing on Holmes, it's so weird. Like, he's got a 2.88 ERA. He's got a 2.46 FIP. He has 10 blown saves with 16 earned runs allowed this season. It's just weird. Like, I don't know if he's just pitching in a lot of 1-run games and there's just been no margin for error, but like, he's been really good this season. And it just seems like it's been like, he's bad against lefties because of the arsenal that he has, but I don't know. It's weird. I don't feel like he's been that bad, even though obviously I understand the frustration.
Yeah, his BABIP is 350 on the season, so
Yeah.
that is pretty high there. Obviously, I watch a lot of Yankee games. He doesn't miss as many bats as a traditional closer. He gives up lots of hard ground balls, so sometimes those squeak through. He also has just been doomed.
He's bad against lefties. Like, he's got like a 750 OPS against lefties. He's a sinker, sweeper, slider guy, which there's not really a weapon there to get lefties out. So like, he's not perfect. I don't think they have a better option.
They might not. I can tell you just watching the games, it feels a lot more frustrating than the actual numbers would indicate, but I
get it.
I don't know how we've gotten to that point. It's a weird season for him. Reds president of baseball operations, Nick Kroll, said that an MRI on Hunter Green's elbow revealed the injury is not as significant as originally feared. Kroll added that Green will get a second opinion. The Cubs released Hector Neris on Tuesday, and a save opportunity came up right away. Porter Hodge was used in the ninth inning with a 2-run lead. He gave up a hit, but struck out 2 for his second save. Hodge has actually had a really good season, 2.08 ERA, .89 whip, over a strikeout per inning. We mentioned Jorge Lopez on our weekend recap podcast. He didn't pitch in this game. He did pitch on both Friday and Saturday. 2-3 days later, it feels like he should have been available.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure where they go, but the first opportunity was Porter Hodge.
Yeah, and what was the Dodgers game that we're talking about? It's funny how we think we get a handle on what teams are likely to do, and then they throw a curveball. And in the Cubs scenario, it was Lopez not getting the save, and for the Dodgers, it's Daniel Hudson, who is 1 out away from getting the save, which makes 3 different pitchers getting a save in a row for the Dodgers now, which is very funny.
Musical chairs, as it has been for a long time now with Dave Roberts and the Dodgers. They did say yesterday that Michael Kopech he's gassed, so they wanted to give him a few days off. And of course, they have 2 save opportunities in those 2 days, but I would guess we'll see Kopech Wednesday or Thursday, something like that. And more often than not, as long as he pitches the way that he has, I think he will get probably the majority of the saves moving forward for the Dodgers. Assuming Ranger Suarez does not suffer a setback in his bullpen session, he will return Saturday against the Royals. Ha-Sung Kim was placed in the IL with right shoulder inflammation. He jammed his shoulder on a slide on Sunday. This injury came out of nowhere. The Orioles placed Zach Eflin on the IL with right shoulder inflammation. He didn't really show any signs of the injury after, posting 4 straight quality starts since joining the Orioles. He actually looked really good, and we spoke about that after his last start. So pretty bad timing for Zach Eflin. Alex Bregman has now missed 5 straight due to swelling in the back of his right elbow. Jeimer Candelario was placed in the IL with a fractured left big toe. The Reds started Noelvi Marte at third, Ty France at first, and Jonathan India at DH here on Tuesday. The Rangers are hopeful Max Scherzer can return from the IL as early as next week. Jorge Soler was out of the lineup, but said he thinks he'll be ready to play on Friday. He has not played since August 14th due to a left hamstring strain.
That's like 9 days. They have a 10-day IL.
The Braves did this with someone else earlier.
Yeah.
Austin Riley, I think.
Mm-hmm. And Rafael Devers earlier, there was a similar situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always frustrating when that happens.
Yeah. Weird stuff. The Rockies manager, Bud Black, confirmed that Victor Vodnik is experiencing soreness in his shoulder and was shut down in his warm-ups before Tuesday's game. That's why they did not use him in the save opportunity. We'll get to that later on. Reese Olson will throw a bullpen on Wednesday, his first time throwing off a mound since going on the IL with a shoulder injury. The Cardinals optioned Jordan Walker back to AAA. He started just 3 out of 6 games while he was up. Tyler Mahle was placed in the IL with shoulder stiffness. With Reynaldo Lopez back from the IL, the Braves are moving Grant Holmes back to the bullpen. Speaking of the Braves, they signed Gio Urshela to a 1-year deal to help fill in for Austin Riley. Welcome back to Johnny Cueto. The Angels have selected Cueto to start Wednesday against the Royals. And just a few interesting tidbits I found while updating the rankings on Tuesday. Brandon Lau now has first base eligibility. I had no idea he was close, but
yeah,
he has it now, so good for him. 3 names that have lost playing time recently. Lane Thomas has started just 4 of the last 8 games. Michael Garcia has started just 3 of the past 6. And Austin Wells has sat 3 of the last 4, all against left-handed pitching, which the Yankees admitted they plan to use Jose Trevino against lefties moving
But
forward.
also, Jose Trevino is Garrett Cole's personal catcher. So that starts to get a little hairy because, all right, Trevino's going to start 1 out of 5. Then you figure about 1 out of 5, maybe 3 out of 7 or whatever the number would be for left-handed pitchers. And, it starts to get pretty close to just an even split moving forward if you project it out. But Austin Wells has shown enough that even if he's in a pretty even split, I'm still going to rank him as a top 15 catcher, just maybe not the top 12 guy it looked like he could be. And one thing, the Cardinals sent Jordan Walker down, which makes sense. He's not going to play against, he was only playing against lefties. They wanted to have him play every day, whatever. Have you seen the numbers of the guy they called up, Lucan Baker?
I know that he's put up some numbers in the past. I did not look at his
absolutely stupid numbers.
Yeah.
He's 27 years old at AAA. He's played 192 games over the past 2 seasons. He has 65 home runs in those 192 games with he had an 1159 OPS. He's probably nothing. He's probably just a platoon bat, but I just noticed that one and wanted to shout it out in, deep NL only leagues. Lucan Baker is someone who has been very productive at AAA.
Yeah, 32 home runs with an
already
OPS in 108 games at AAA this year. It also comes with a 231 batting average. Yeah. He hit much better last year, but we've seen stories like this happen before. I mean, Christian Walker was a quad A player before he got his chance with the D-backs, and then it worked out. And this actually kind of reminds me a little bit of another name that was originally on the Cardinals, Luke Voit, who got the chance to play, and he ran with it too. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but crazy things happen.
I think he's a name only NL only people need to know about, but know about it.
Yeah. I did want to just mention with Lane Thomas, it was either you or Scott. I think it was you who mentioned, some skepticism when going to the Guardians where the splits, Lane Thomas is much better against left-handed pitching. He's now sat out 4 of the past 8 games. If you play in a 3 outfielder head-to-head points league, I think you could probably drop Lane Thomas for any of these names that have emerged recently. TJ Friedl, Masataka Yoshida, anyone who's hot right now. I think
between this and between this and Richard Lovelady getting a save, maybe we need to start taking Chris Towers a little more seriously, guys.
Lucan Baker, you heard it here first.
Exactly.
Keep an eye on him. Let's get into some of those waiver wire pitchers. Lots of names that are available, but are any of them good? The first group, Shane Baz turned in a strong start at the Oakland A's, 7 2/3 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts in that one. Eduardo Rodriguez, a solid start at the Marlins, 5 1/3, 1 run with 5 strikeouts. Frankie Montas turned in a quality start at the Cardinals, 7 shutout innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, did have 13 whiffs on 89 pitches. And Cody Bradford continues to pitch well, this time up against the Pirates, 7 innings, 3 runs, 8 strikeouts, 0 walks. He's a soft tossing lefty, but he has really good control. Fly ball pitcher. He's managed to avoid home runs decently so far. And his fastball and changeup combination looks like a really, really good one. I don't know. There could be something here. Chris, any enthusiasm for Bradford, Frankie Montas, Erod, and Shane Baz?
Yeah, Shane Bradford, or Cody Bradford, who was met with a chorus of who when I drafted him in one of our head-to-head points leagues. Yeah. No, I think Eduardo Rodriguez probably needs to be closer to universally rostered. Yeah, it was the Marlins. He hasn't been incredible, but what we've seen from him when he's going well in his career is not a ton of strikeouts generally. There have been some outlier seasons, but on the whole, average-ish. Good control is what you're hoping for, and very good quality of contact suppression. That's what he's shown so far. And he's obviously got a very good team backing him up. So I think Eduardo Rodriguez looks pretty good. Shane Baz, it's like different versions of kind of interesting every time out. Previous start, he went curveball heavy, got more of his whiffs with that one. And this one, it was the slider that was a little better. 2 quality starts in a row, at least 7 innings in both. Not getting the strikeouts we're looking for. This is one that I think he should be universally rostered because the floor seems pretty high for Shane Baz. I don't know if the path to unlocking that ceiling is there yet. I'm interested in breakout 2025. He's going to be on my list for sure. But he's not doing it consistently enough. And then Montas, I don't think there's anything there. He was one of the 2 start sleepers for this week. Looks like it's going to work out. I'd rather have Bradford, who also has RP eligibility for those points leagues. So I think Bradford, at the very least, should be rostered in all points leagues.
Yeah, the Frankie Montas thing is weird because...
I mean, he's RP eligible as well, but I just don't think he's very good.
Mm-hmm. The Frankie Montas thing is weird because his splitter still looks like it's really good. 262 expected WOBA, 40% whiff rate, but he only threw 4 of them in this start, and it's a 19% usage on the season. So I'm not sure why he doesn't use that splitter more, but yeah, I'm not really buying in on this start from Frankie Montas. How would you just rank the group? Boz, Erod, Montas, and Bradford.
Boz, Erod, Bradford, Montas.
All right. And the next group includes Dean Kramer, who turned in a strong start at the Mets, 6 innings, 1 run with 7 strikeouts. Javier Assad pitched well up against the Tigers, 5 2/3, 1 run with 7 strikeouts. DJ Hers, a solid start up against the Rockies, 5 2/3, 2 earned runs allowed, 3 runs total with 7 strikeouts, 13 whiffs on 93 pitches. And in 6 starts since being recalled, DJ Hers 3.07 ERA, 123 whip, over a strikeout per inning. And Edward Cabrera turned in a quality start up against the D-backs, 6 innings, 3 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, only 2 whiffs on 90 pitches. Feels a little bit fortunate to come away with this result. How would you rank this group, Chris? Cabrera, Hers, Assad, and Dean Kramer.
I honestly think I might put Hers at the top of the list, and then
I think so too.
I'm not that interested in anyone else. Kramer, it's almost entirely if you have any interest in him because of the team he plays for, but it's got to be against a good matchup for me to trust him. So not a must roster. Assad, this is his first time throwing more than 5 innings since July, and he had only thrown 5 innings twice in his previous 9 starts. So I think Javier Assad's actually a decent talent, but he just hasn't been going deep enough lately to have much fantasy appeal at all. So I think Hertz is by far the most interesting of this group. Then it's probably Kramer. I want Edward Cabrera to be something, but it just doesn't seem like it is. I remember before the season, there were rumors that like the Marlins were going to trade him for Nick Gonzalez, and I thought that would have been dumb. And now I really wish that they had. So yeah, I think Hers is the only one that's more than a streamer.
Mm-hmm. I would actually take Hers over Frankie Montas from the previous group.
Agreed.
As well. But I think I would still take Boz, Erod, and Bradford ahead of Hers, but it's kind of close. I think all 4 of those names are pretty interesting there. With Javier Assad, one thing I wanted to point out, the control, just bad. It's been bad this season. 4 walks per 9. And although he has a 2.60 ERA over his last 6 starts, that comes with a 141 whip and 15 walks over 27 2/3 innings. So, the ERA results are there, but everything else under the hood, not looking great for Javier Assad here in the second half. Two names in deeper leagues that pitched very well. Joey Estes up against Tampa Bay, 7 2/3, 1 run with 5 strikeouts, and Austin Gomber at the Nationals, 7 innings, 1 run with 5 strikeouts. He had 13 whiffs on 96 pitches. Both of these are under 20% rostered, so pretty deep league stuff, but anything here, Chris, with Joey Estes and Austin Gomber?
No, Estes is running well right now. He's got a 2.82 ERA in the second half over 7 games, but I don't see any reason to buy into it. He was awful in the first half. His underlying numbers are still pretty bad overall. He doesn't get very many strikeouts. I don't really see any reason to be excited about either of these guys. Gomber, like maybe if he played somewhere besides Colorado for half his games, but this game wasn't at Colorado. He's going to have a few more starts there. I think he's a streamer away from cores at best.
Mm-hmm. This next segment is not the drop-o-meter. This is the please drop these pitchers off your team-o-meter. That is what this is called. And the first name is Nick Pivetta, who had another rough start. in a really tough matchup. I'll give him the benefit. Well, not really the benefit of the doubt, but I guess an excuse. 5 innings, 5 runs, 2 homers allowed. His last 5 starts, Nick Pivetta has a 7.50 ERA, a 1.38 WHIP, 10 homers allowed. He has allowed 2 home runs in each of his last 5 starts. And his overall ERA is now up to 4.70 on the season, and he's still 82% rostered. Chris, would you drop Nick Pivetta for any of the pitchers we talked about previously?
No, not for Austin Gomber. I don't think I would do it for Frankie Montas or Edward Cabrera, but anyone with a pulse, yeah, I would. And that includes Kramer. It might just depend on what the next matchup is. Hers, I would do that. Bradford, Rodriguez, Shane Baz. I do like when I say something that's kind of just like a half-formed idea, like off the cuff, and then like a smart person comes up with data to prove it. And I mentioned something, I think on Sunday's podcast or maybe last week, about how the Red Sox, there was a lot of hype around the Red Sox pitchers in April with Andrew Bailey as their pitching coach and their relationship with the driveline guys and this approach where they just stopped throwing fastballs. Basically, they've thrown fewer fastballs as a team, or a lower rate of fastballs than any other team in baseball. And I mentioned in a previous podcast, maybe we were talking about Tanner Houck or Cutter Crawford or Nick Pivetta, that's an approach that can run into problems in the long run. Like you can reach a point of diminishing returns. We saw it when the sweeper kind of took baseball by storm a couple years ago. And then as hitters saw more sweepers, they got better at hitting sweepers. And as hitters saw more high fastballs, they got better at hitting high fastballs. It's just one of the things that's always true in the push and pull between hitters and pitchers. And it's a constant arms race. And, Sarah's had a good piece in The Athletic today about just that topic, about how the Red Sox pitching has become much less effective as the season has gone on. And I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing with all these guys, Cutter Crawford, Nick Pivetta, Tanner Houck. And then also just, this is who Nick Pavetta's always been. Like he'll have these stretches where he looks good. He'll have very good FIP, because that assumes that a pitcher, or XFIP, I guess, would be the one that assumes that a pitcher doesn't really have any control over the home runs they give up. But Nick Pivetta just always gives up a lot of hard contact, and he'll have gems down the stretch for sure. But he's not someone I want in my lineup right now.
Gosh, Nick Pivetta, if you play in a best ball league, that is where you want Nick Pivetta. You don't have to decide when to use him.
Yeah.
But when he has that 7 shutout inning with 12 strikeouts, all right, I'll get all those fantasy points, but I don't have to worry about, deciding whether or not I ever want to use Nick Pivetta or not.
He's got a 5.15 ERA since May 1st. Like, it's not just the last 7 starts or 5 starts, whatever. He's been bad for most of the season now.
Mm-hmm. Your hypothesis, or I guess, theory regarding the Red Sox pitching, it's interesting. I wonder if there's a little bit of a chicken or egg going on there, because I think I mostly agree that when you throw that many breaking balls, like how sustainable is that over the course of a season? Just the ability to land those for strikes, and the more that opposing batters see those breaking balls, they kind of learn to lay off a little bit and things like that. But also, a lot of the Red Sox pitchers are just in uncharted territory with their innings.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's like, is it about the
no, that's fair.
pitches, or is it about the workload? Is it a little bit of both? It could
be a little bit of both is probably the answer. But I just think one thing that has always been true for pitching, or for baseball, is that the more hitters see of a pitcher or a pitch or a pitch type, the better they tend to do against them. And so it's why the third time through the order penalty is such a real thing. It's why pitchers in the pre-balanced schedule days especially did tend to do better when they switched leagues, and hitters would tend to do worse when they switch leagues, and vice versa. So, that it's just, I think it's a little bit of both. And with Houck and Crawford, I think especially, Pavetta's a veteran, so I don't know how much the workload plays into that. I think that's just, this is Nick Pivetta being Nick Pivetta.
100%. The other name on this, please drop these pitchers off your Timo meter, Walker Buehler. And I know some people might scoff, and why are you still talking about Walker Buehler?
75% rostered.
Still 75% rostered on CBS. So I don't know if these are just all the teams that have like gone into fantasy football mode and they're not checking their Walker Buehler fantasy teams anymore. But even against the Mariners, Walker Buehler could not get it done. 4 innings, 7 hits, 3 runs, 3 walks to 1 strikeout, 2 starts since returning. He has more walks than strikeouts in each of those. He has also 4 strikeouts or less in 8 of 10 starts. So there is just nothing redeeming for Walker Buehler right now. And I hate to be so harsh on him because it's the second time coming back from Tommy John surgery. And I hope he can figure something out. My guess is he probably has to take like a 1-year prove-it deal with somebody this offseason, and hopefully he can get back on track. But the point is he should not be 75% rostered in fantasy.
No, I agree with that. There's nothing. There's nothing that we've seen from him this season in either the minors or the majors that would suggest that he can still be an effective pitcher. I think, with an off season of work, maybe, but the fact is he went back down to the minors, worked on his mechanics, worked on his arsenal, went to off-site training, and still looks this bad. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason to be optimistic at this point.
All right, let's take our final break, and when we return, we'll slide over to the hitters. We'll do that right after this. Welcome back in. Let's talk waiver wire hitters. And JD Martinez has homered in back-to-back games, but he has slowed down a bit overall. Previous 14 games before this one, a 178 batting average, 1 home run, 635 OPS, still hitting the ball really hard. Seems like maybe he's been a little bit unlucky. Quality of contact is there. Expected numbers look good. 62% rostered. If you have JD Martinez, Chris, would you hold, or would you maybe swap him out for one of these hot hitters that we continue to talk about, the Yoshidas, TJ Friedels, Jake McCarthy types?
I think Yoshida is okay if you're just looking for a utility, and McCarthy, I guess if you need speed, but I don't really buy McCarthy's run. I can't really explain why it's happening, so I'm pretty skeptical of it. And Carpenter just doesn't play against lefties, so I think that puts a ceiling on how valuable he can be. But Yoshida, when he gets locked in, he really locks in, and he's super locked in right now. So I'm okay with Yoshida for Martinez, but that's probably it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there could be something to JD Martinez underperforming his expected stats? I know you used to bring this up with like Miguel Cabrera, where really slow sluggers kind of tend to underperform their expected stats. Do you think something like that could be happening for JD Martinez?
Yeah, that's absolutely a thing. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like if you're really, really slow and you hit the ball really hard, what defensive players are going to do is just take a couple steps back. And that gives them more time to react. It gives them more time to throw you out. And it shouldn't impact your power production. But Martinez has taken enough of a step back in his underlying power stats since last season that, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a decline there. And then, the batting average specifically is where he would continue to decline. So, yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Mm-hmm. 2 middle infield options who have been hot lately. Jorge Polanco had 2 more hits here on Tuesday. Gavin Lux hit another home run. Chris, who would you prefer between Polanco and Gavin Lux?
Man, I think I said Polanco when we talked about this on Sunday, maybe. And then has Lux homered twice since then?
Yeah.
I think I'd still go Polanco. I believe in it a little more, but Lux is making any skepticism look pretty dumb. Did you see the weird home run today?
Yeah, that was crazy. It went over the wall. And then it kind of like snuck back under the wall.
I think what happened is it went between the padding and the wall, which would be a home run. Mm-hmm. But then it fell through the padding and came out through the field. It was super weird.
So weird. Yeah. It was like an optical illusion watching live. I just thought, okay, the ball must have fell up against the wall and it got like wedged in there. But yeah, you watch the replay. It did go over the wall. So yes, another home run for Gavin Lux. It's close between these two. I don't think that they're, must add players, 12-team head-to-head points league. But again, if you play in any slightly deeper format with a middle infield spot, 12-team league, Gavin Lux, he's consistently batting 5th in the Dodgers lineup. So the counting stats could be there. I like both. I think I would lean a little bit more with Lux, just with how hot he's been recently. Sure. One other name here, Alejandro Kirk has been solid since taking over as the main catcher for the Blue Jays. 1 for 3 with a walk and his 4th home run. Last 19 games, he's batting .297. He's got 2 home runs, 11 RBI, only 14% rostered. Probably just a name for 2 catcher leagues. I think he's pretty clearly behind that group of Austin Wells, Joey Bart, and Del Castillo, right?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Again, that was Alejandro Kirk. Let's get into some hitter questions. And, one name we haven't talked much about this season is O'Neal Cruz. 2 for 3 with a triple, an RBI, and his 14th steal in Tuesday's game. And overall, it's a .262 batting average, 18 home runs, 14 steals, a .789 OPS. He had that really bad April, has been much better since the start of May. Strikeout rate has improved throughout the course of the season. But overall, I think it has been a letdown based on how much helium we got coming into the season. How would you evaluate O'Neal Cruz's 2024 to this point?
I think you kind of nailed it. It's been, for the most part, for fantasy, a pretty good. You look at the numbers overall, but especially since May, you're talking about a guy is on a 25 homer, 20 steal pace. But he's really bad against lefties, 33% walk rate or 33% strikeout rate, OPS of 610. Decent power against them, which is enough to make me think that it might be playable moving forward. Like, he's not someone who's destined to be a platoon bat, but yeah, it's been a disappointment. You can clearly see the upside, and you can clearly see, like, when he locks in, he's a pretty special hitter, and maybe it all comes together next season. Or maybe he just goes on a stretch here at the end of the season that gets him to 30 homers and, 20 steals. And all of a sudden we look at the end of the season, it's, hey, he pretty much did what we hoped he would. But yeah, it's harder to see the superstar outcome now than it was before the season.
Mm-hmm. The quality of contact is still top notch. I mean, elite level stuff here from O'Neal Cruz. Actually, looking at his StatCast page now, he is 100th percentile in bat speed, which is a newer metric this season, which we don't cite often. But looking at it now, and then just below that, you see all of his plate discipline metrics that are ice cold blue. I wonder if it would benefit O'Neal Cruz to maybe take a little bit off of the swing. I think he still has enough power where if he did that and focused on putting the ball in play a little bit more, he would just be a more well-rounded player. It's hard to tell someone to change completely who they are, but I just wonder if that would benefit someone like O'Neal Cruz, because the plate discipline, it's pretty bad. 77% zone contact.
Yeah.
He chases. There's lots of swing and miss. You mentioned the numbers against lefties. In his career, a 43% strikeout rate against lefties. That is abysmal. It's not impossible to improve. We've seen both Gunnar Henderson and CJ Abrams do that this season. I think he's still an unfinished product, but a bit of a letdown season here from O'Neal Cruz, at least at this point.
One thing that, the release of the bat speed data on StatCast has shown is there is an inverse relationship between bat speed and swing length. The longer your swing is, the faster your swing tends to be, which
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that's into Luis Arias has the shortest swing in baseball and one of the slowest, right? Like that makes 100% sense. So it's hard to know, what do you lose when you try to swing slower? We've seen a few situations like Gavin Lux where he is swinging notably harder than he did in the first half. I think his average bat speed is up like 2 miles per hour or thereabouts since the All-Star break, which is something Scott White has mentioned a few times. And it's really worked out for him. The problem with Cruz is he both chases a lot, 32% career chase rate, 33% this season. League average is 28.5%. And he swings and misses a lot. And like that's where you're super aggressive. You got to make a lot of contact. If you're not going to make a lot of contact, you got to be selective. And he kind of falls on the wrong side of both. And for as much as we've talked about upside and youth, he's 25. Not old, but not so young that like we compare him to Ellie De La Cruz a lot. Ellie De La Cruz is a couple years younger. So it suggests that there's not as much time to figure things out.
Yeah. And I'm happy you mentioned Ellie De La Cruz because I am big on accountability and transparency. And I know coming into the season, very often I would say, why take Ellie in the second or third round when you can get O'Neal Cruz 4 or 5 rounds later? Well, we are seeing why you shouldn't pass on Ellie De La Cruz for O'Neal Cruz right now. What is going on with Bryce Harper, who is ice cold, along with many of the Phillies right now? 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Last 23 games for Harper. It's a .204 batting average, 3 homers, a sub 650 OPS. 27% strikeout rate isn't egregious. He's still hitting the ball hard. Lots of line drives, but only 2 barrels during this time. So I think that kind of explains some of it. But I've had some people in the mentions recently, Chris, asking us to evaluate Bryce Harper and what's going on here. So what say you?
I'm sure I could look into the data and find some explanation for why things have gone wrong. Like you mentioned, the barrel rate is low. We've got a decade plus of Bryce Harper being one of the best hitters in baseball, but also it's worth noting having some inconsistencies from a year to year and month to month standpoint. So I think it's just that. I think it's just this is what happens sometimes. You know, I'm looking at 23 game rolling averages, and he had a stretch at the beginning of 2022 that was actually a little bit worse than this. Obviously, last year, coming back from the elbow injury, he had several stretches worse than this. But this, you know, he's got a 278 WOBA over his past 23 games. He's had a stretch about that bad or worse in every season of his career, basically.
Yeah.
So I can't say I haven't noticed it because I have. The whole Phillies lineup has slowed down. I don't think there's anything there.
Yeah. I think most people, you know, when they see something like this going on, they want an explanation because this is a really important time of the fantasy calendar where you're in your head-to-head playoffs, or, you know, you're trying to chase people down in roto leagues and stuff. So it's under a microscope a little bit more, but it's also a really long season, and there are ebbs and flows with every player, right? Like no player is just good for 6 months straight. And I think we're just seeing some of that right now. With
people were worried about Aaron Judge in April.
Yeah.
People worry about Francisco Lindor literally every April. These things happen. Frank, have you seen Forrest Gump?
I have. It's been a long time.
Okay. He wears a shirt in that movie. I don't know if you remember. Or maybe that he says, I don't, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but blank happens is the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah. And
that I think explains Bryce Harper struggling.
Let's talk about Jarren Duran, who continued his amazing season with a perfect night at the plate. 4 for 4 with a walk, a double, a homer, 3 runs, and 2 RBI. Obviously, one of the biggest breakouts this year. And the question here is, and Scott kind of brought this up the other day, is how early can you see someone like Jarren Duran going in next year's drafts? It's so hard to answer, but I don't know. Like, we're putting our thinking cap on. The season's winding down. We'll start to have more conversations like this. What do you think about Jarren Duran?
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely the right time to start spinning some of these conversations ahead. I've been doing that in the FBT newsletter. I plan on working on a piece about like the X number of players who can help their status the most the rest of the way. And Duran, you know, I think it's mostly just about avoiding a collapse because he's playing like a second round caliber player and has been doing so pretty consistently all season. So I don't know, man. He's just gotten better. Like he's got an OPS over 900 the past 2 months now, in each of the past 2 months. I don't think he's quite that good. I think he's probably played over his head a little bit. But he played over his head last year. That might just be a skill that he has for one way or another. But I think third round feels reasonable.
Yeah, I was thinking third or fourth round. Probably third round. Yeah, that probably makes sense. You know, we kind of liken Jarren Duran coming into the season where if it all works out, he can give us a season that Josh Lowe gave us last year, right? And he's actually not far off from what Josh Lowe did last season. I think there's a little bit more juice with someone like Jarren Duran. So, you know, before all the injury stuff happened, I think Josh Lowe was like a top 75 pick in early drafts. So, yeah, you'd say probably
doesn't have the same platoon concerns, doesn't have the same playing time concerns. You know, say what you want about Lowe and getting hurt and all that, but like this felt like a reasonable outcome for him going into last season. You know, it was a 1-year breakout, whereas Duran had an 828 OPS last season. He just didn't play every day. So he's mostly, in a lot of ways, doing what he did last year. He's been better, but if he was an 830 OPS bat, but was doing everything else, I still think we'd feel very similar about him. I do think, like, I don't know how long if he's long for the Red Sox. There's been some rumblings that the team isn't like super thrilled about him. So I don't know. That's one thing to keep an eye on in the offseason, but I don't know how much that would change his value. Fenway's actually a really tough place for left-handed power. So it might not even be a bad thing. It's a very good place for batting average, though. So
let's stick with the Red Sox and talk about Triston Casas, who had his first big game since returning from the IL. 2 for 3 with his 7th home run, 2 walks, 3 RBI in 5 games since returning, 7 hits, has that 1 homer, 4 runs, and 3 RBI. He's up to 86% rostered. He's not available on waiver wires, or at least he shouldn't be. The question here is, where do you plan to rank Triston Casas down the stretch? Because I moved him up to my 12th ranked first baseman here on Tuesday.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, but that was what I was thinking when you started to ask the question. So I think that feels reasonable. He's 16 in my latest update, but like moving ahead of Alec Burleson would be easy. Luis Arias would be easy. Yeah, I think he can get into the top 12 pretty easy. Remember that we started to see it in the second half last season. And obviously the injury derailed what should have been, or what we hoped would be, a breakout season for Triston Casas. But he had a 1034 OPS with 15 homers in 54 games in the second half last season. It's possible that Triston Casas is just, I think Scott's made a Freddie Freeman comp. I don't know if I think that one, but like,
I think he's more Matt Olson than Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, like Paul Goldschmidt without the steals. I think there's a little more batting average than Olson, but yeah, like a really Anthony Rizzo, like peak Anthony Rizzo, but without Rizzo was actually a pretty good source of stolen bases at one point as well. That's the kind of upside I think he has.
And it's a small sample. We have no idea which way his season would have went overall, but 7 homers in 27 games. I mean, if we're just pacing that out, that's 35 to 40 home runs over a full season. So, man, the power is there, and Casas is hitting right in the middle of one of the best lineups in baseball with the Red Sox. So, yeah, I think long-term, we're going to get some big breakout seasons from Triston Casas. Let's get into some other leftovers here and some big pitching bounce backs. Mitch Keller had a great start at the Rangers, 7 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts, 13 whiffs on 98 pitches. And Robbie Ray up against the White Sox. Everybody bounces back against the White Sox. 6 2/3, 1 run, 9 strikeouts to 0 walks, which is the key. This was his first start with 0 walks on the season. 22 whiffs on 96 pitches, a big one here for both Robbie Ray and Mitch Keller.
Yeah, it was 21 whiffs, I think, on just the fastball and slider alone for Ray. He only threw 7 curveballs, so he didn't need anything else because it's the White Sox. And if you're a major league caliber pitcher, you should be able to do well against them. But the 4.88 ERA is ugly. There's no question about that. 112 whip. That's pretty good. It's like I think it's a 3.33 ERA if you just take out the last start where he gave up 5 earned runs in a third of an inning or whatever it was. I feel very good about Robbie Ray moving forward. I think you just want him in your starting lineup. Mitch Keller, this is frustrating because he gave up 15 earned runs in his previous 2 starts, then goes out and shuts out a decent Rangers lineup with 9 strikeouts. The problem with Mitch Keller, and I think it's just always going to be a problem, and it's something we've talked about a lot with like Aaron Nola in years past, where I think the margin for error for Mitch Keller might just be really slim. And on the whole, he's going to be very good, but these stretches where he just gets bombed are not a fluke because he is like 90th percentile in zone pitch rate, the number of pitches he throws in the strike zone. He pounds the zone. He doesn't have swing and miss stuff. And if you look at the guys who are among the leaders in zone rate, you have a couple of like Garrett Crochet, actually, surprisingly, and Tyler Glasnow, 2 guys that we don't necessarily think of as having great control or command. Those guys have massive swing and miss stuff, and they can get away pitching in the zone. It's a little harder to do when you're Mitch Keller and you kind of pitch to contact. And there are going to be times when BABIP or hard contact, whatever it is, just screws him over. And I think that's just life with Mitch Keller.
You know, Mitch Keller to me is just eerily similar to someone we're about to talk about, Jose Barrios.
Yeah, I think he's a better version of Jose Barrios.
These are pitchers where, and I think like a month ago, we probably said to drop Barrios, and looking at it now, that was probably an overreaction. But these are guys that you just leave in your lineup through the ups and the downs, and by the end of the season, they're just going to give you their mid to upper 3s ERA, a solid whip. They're going to go 6 innings per start. They're going to give you a chance at a win, like okay strikeouts, but not great strikeouts. And that's just who they are. And there is a place for those pitchers in fantasy. They're probably not ever going to be anything better than that.
And I think the biggest thing with both Barrios and Keller is like, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to figure out, okay, now's the time I can
so just leave them in.
It takes a certain kind of will or a willingness to stomach the truly bad starts because they're going to be there. And a lot of the people that we hear from don't have the stomach for it. A lot of people, I'm not saying it's bad, but a lot of people are very reactionary to these kind of things, or reactive, I guess would be the better word. And if that's you, don't draft Jose Barrios.
Yeah.
Because what you're probably going to do is start him through a bad stretch, get frustrated, drop him, and miss out on the good stuff.
Yep. And with that, let's talk about some other pitching leftovers. 2 good and 2 bad. The good, Jose Barrios. That's right. You guessed it. Up against the Reds, 7 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. He had 16 whiffs on 96 pitches. And over his last 5 starts, it's a 2.73 ERA and a 1.03 whip. So if you didn't start him for all those, then you're probably pretty upset.
And he probably had a 6 ERA over 2 months prior to that.
That sounds exactly right. The other good one was Zach Wheeler, a quality start at the Braves, 6 innings, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, 20 whiffs on 97 pitches. He has turned in 4 straight quality starts. Anything else on Wheeler and Barrios?
No, like I said, like you can, Barrios threw his 4-seamer and his changeup more. And I don't think that stuff really matters in a macro sense. Like maybe there's something about Cincinnati that those things worked against them, but there's no guarantee with Jose Barrios that if he does the same thing the next time out, it's going to lead to the same results. Consistent inconsistency has been Jose Barrios' brand for close to a decade now. I don't see any reason to think that'll change.
2 bad pitching leftovers. Reynaldo Blanco, 3 2/3, 5 runs, 4 walks to 6 strikeouts. Last 6 starts for him, a 5.34 ERA and a 1.40 whip. And Tyler Anderson has given up a lot of damage over his last 2 starts. This one, he was at the Royals, 6 innings, 12 hits, 5 runs, 2 walks to 2 strikeouts. Oddly enough, still had 14 whiffs on 95 pitches, but it only turned into 2 strikeouts. And he now has a 15% swinging strike rate over his last 7 starts, but it's 2 really rough outings in a row. So What are your thoughts here on Reynaldo Blanco? Do you continue to just start someone like him, and Tyler Anderson? Do you hold on after these two bad ones?
I'm more comfortable actually holding on to Anderson. Given the whiffs that he's been generating and the strikeouts lately, I think he should turn it around. Blanco, for a guy, like we usually think about innings concerns for young pitchers, but Reynaldo Blanco has, what he go today? 3 2/3 innings. So he's up to 137 2/3 innings this season. Last season, I think he threw 125. Before that, he had never thrown 100 innings in a season. I don't think he had thrown like 50 innings in a season before last year. So, this is a converted reliever. They're asking him to go deeper. There's been talk about having to limit his innings. Maybe what we're seeing is Reynaldo Blanco just running out of gas a little bit and probably playing over his head a lot for the first 4 months of the season.
Some hitting leftovers. Corbin Carroll continues his power binge, 2 for 4 with his 14th home run. He has 6 home runs in his past 13 games. George Springer clearly listens to the podcast. I brought him up on the drop-o-meter earlier in the season with Chris. Chris said, don't drop him. I said, you could drop him. And he went off. Yesterday, I brought him up 28 days later segment. And what did he do? He went off 2 for 5 with a double dong, 3 RBI. I don't know. I guess I'm just really bad at timing up George Springer.
Let's just schedule an anti-George Springer section every 3 weeks or so, just to make sure he stays on track.
Yep. Early to mid-September. That sounds about right for George Springer. Zach Neto continues his big August, 2 for 5 with his 19th home run. He has a 1047 OPS in the month. Juan Soto and Aaron Judge went back-to-back in the first inning of the Yankees game. That's about the nicest thing I will say about the Yankees here on Tuesday. Ryan Jeffers has homered in each of his last 3 starts. I say starts because he has alternated games with Christian Vasquez.
Vasquez has been really good lately.
Yeah, I can't even knock the Twins for doing that because Vasquez is hitting here in the second half. So if you're in a 15-team roto league with 2 catchers, I think Vasquez is in play. But I just did want to mention Jeffers. He's up to 20 home runs, so a nice little breakout season for him as well. We have waited all season to see if Jurickson Profar would slow down. Now, August has been a pretty bad month for him, but he hit a clutch go-ahead home run here on Tuesday, and maybe that can help get the August numbers up and finish strong in September as well. I did want to mention for Max Muncy, make it 2 for 2. He has been back for 2 games. He has homered in each of those. Some bullpen updates for the D-backs. Justin Martinez struck out 1 for his 4th save of the season. For the Rockies, I mentioned Victor Vodnik dealing with shoulder soreness. It was, let me get this right, Angel Chivilli, which is spelled Chivilli. If you are looking for him in the deepest NL-only leagues, he got the 9th inning and picked up his first save of the season.
And it did sound like there was a chance Vodnik might miss. Might need to go on the IL from what I saw. So it's the Rockies. But maybe Chevy can be a very, very deep source of saves. There's enough guys out there that I don't think you want to go out and get him in a 10-team even categories league, but a name to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And while it's the Rockies, Vodnik was pitching well and he was racking up some saves recently, so it's not crazy. For the Braves, Raisel Iglesias pitched a clean 9th inning for his 27th save. For the Brewers, Devin Williams got himself into quite the jam in the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He gave up a walk, 2 hits, but he struck out all 3 for his 5th save of the season. For the Red Sox, Kenley Jansen pitched a clean 9th for his 24th save. For the Rays, Edwin Uceta, which is spelled Uceta, got the final 4 outs for his first save of the season, and this was their first save opportunity since Pete Fairbanks went on the IL, and Uceta is having an awesome season. .90 ERA, .57 whip, 10.8 K per 9, 14.5% swinging strike rate. So another name, if you play in deeper leagues, it wouldn't surprise me if the Rays kind of mix and match here, but this was the name that got the first opportunity. For the Padres, Robert Suarez struck out 1 for his 29th save. For the Mariners, Andres Munoz came in the 7th inning, facing the heart of the Dodgers lineup. I believe in the 7th, he gave up the tying run, and then in the 8th, He gave up a 3-run homer for the Braves to blow it open. So just annoying usage for Munoz and obviously a bad outing for him. And then, as we mentioned with the Dodgers, Daniel Hudson in a 1-run game picked up the save there for them. To stream or not to stream on Wednesday, some options here. We have Jameson Taillon gets the Tigers. Michael Lorenzen up against the Angels. Tobias Myers is at the Cardinals. Yariel Rodriguez and Nick Martinez are facing each other. Mitchell Parker gets the Rockies on the road. Andrew Heaney against the Pirates. Woods Richardson at the Padres. There are some decent options. What do you think about Wednesday?
Yeah, I think my favorites are probably Tobias Myers against the Cardinals and Jameson Taillon against the Tigers and Yariel Rodriguez against the Reds.
I agree on Myers and Taillon. I know Parker's been bad, but the Rockies on the road, I could see it working out for him.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
On Thursday, we have Gavin Williams, who's at the Yankees. We have Jeffrey Springs at the Oakland A's. Osvaldo Bido is on the other side. He's pitched well recently. He's facing Tampa Bay. Spencer Arrighetti at the Orioles. I don't know.
I mean, he was so good his previous 2 starts, and then he goes out and is just meh against the White Sox.
He's probably going to be awesome against the Orioles.
Arrighetti has more upside than anyone on this list, anyone on Wednesday, probably anyone we really ever talk about in this segment. But I can't say affirmatively you should start him. I would go with Jeffrey Springs ahead of him. I think Jeffrey Springs probably shouldn't be rostered low enough to count for this segment anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. Springs at Oakland is the top one. If you are desperate,
Bido is second, Arrighetti third. It at least it's at Baltimore, which is a better place to pitch, but he just hasn't shown any consistency.
I was going to say Arrighetti second and Bido third, but yeah, we have the same top 3 there. We are going to wrap it up. For Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.